While the NRD strive to ensure that Nebraskans have enough water into the future, one of their original mandates still is to address the problems that occur when there is too much water.
Rooftops and driveways don't allow infiltration of water like fields and green spaces. And so this is probably the most flash flood prone watersheds in the entire Midwest. It's a 400 and some square mile watershed.
The Papio, Missouri NRD inherited a master plan developed in the 1960s and 70s from the Army Corps of Engineers after serious flooding impacted the area.
This is one of the reservoirs that were on our master plan. It's called the Papillion Creek Watershed Management Plan. And this is, like I said, the latest one to be constructed. We have 12 more that need to be built in the Omaha metro area. This protects Papillion and Bellevue from flooding. It's not unusual for this lake to raise 5 or 6 feet after a 3 or 4 inch rain event. And so it's a huge amount of water that gets held back from potentially entering the creek and flooding downstream communities.
With each passing year, completing the watershed management plan becomes more of a challenge and increasingly important.
Development is occurring at such a rapid pace, we are in jeopardy of losing these sites to construct. The levee system is to guide the water through the community or through the area. Without the levee system, obviously the water would not be channelized and it would just spread out through your community or your area and flood it.
With any such NRD project, the benefits are multi-purpose and include green space, recreation, and urban wildlife.
People don't realize their number one purpose is flood control. And so we stress that this is a flood control reservoir, not just a fishing lake.
This NRD project in northwest Omaha is a critical link in the chain of flood protection.
This dam will provide flood protection for downstream of the West Papio Creek, around the 144th and Center Street to Q Street areas, which is primarily commercial and residential.
As the city expands to the north, this project will provide welcome contrast to retail centers and housing developments.
There will be hiking, biking trails, there'll be picnic shelters, there'll be playground equipment. This will be a big sailing lake.
The NRD funds in this project come from local taxpayers, so all of these areas are public spaces.
Our facilities are always 100% open to the public, and we never charge a fee to use them. They're always free, and the philosophy is that taxpayers paid for them to begin with. We're not going to charge people, obviously, to use them.
Critics say that projects like this contribute to urban sprawl. The Papio, Missouri NRD believes they help preserve recreation areas for people to enjoy.
If we built this reservoir or not, this will be homes and rooftops and driveways. And so instead of 600 some acres of lake and wildlife habitat and rec area, it would be 600 and some acres of homes or businesses.
These flood control projects contribute to economic development and add to the appeal of the community.
There'll be a YMCA there, there'll be apartment complexes, there'll be homes, single-family homes, as well as commercial ventures. It just expands the tax base, it creates opportunities. Also the job creation, all of that greatly increases once one of these lakes go into place.
Urban sprawl is not a problem in most districts, including the Lower Platte North NRD. Yet they deal with many of the same challenges on a different scale.
We had 25 times in 10 years where we actually closed the highway. So the need for flood control was accelerating within the watershed. In 1990, a group of citizens from Wahoo, some of the businesses, contacted the NRD about the possibility of building a large flood control structure with recreation on the site out here.
So the NRD oversaw the research needed to formulate a plan. From there, they convened the partners with the expertise and funding to get the job done.
It ended up that at the federal level, we had the Corps of Engineers, the state level, Department of Roads, Department of Natural Resources, and Environmental Trust were our largest partners. And then locally, we had the City of Wahoo, Saunders County, and the Lower Platte North NRD. And there was a lot of sleepless nights that went with this, just nights we weren't sure if the various partnerships were going to work out, if things would end up like they wanted.
Once all the partners were satisfied, the NRD had to come back to the local landowners to get their buy-in, or in this case, their buy-out of 1,600 acres of farmland.
All of the landowners, except one that we visited with, said they really didn't want to sell their land, but they saw the benefit for the project, and they were willing to accept the appraised value for the ground.
In addition to flood protection, the project yielded Lake Wanahoo Recreation Area and an expressway around Wahoo that eases traffic congestion, especially to and from Lincoln on Husker game days.
This project is significant because it really demonstrates the amazing cooperation among agencies of our state government and
Former Congressman Doug B. Ryder is a longtime proponent of this project. He was also a state senator during the formation of the NRD system. The dam is named in his honor.
We had flooding in Lincoln along Antelope Creek, right by through the center of town.
The city of Lincoln, in same general area, was trying to figure out, with the growth in the city to the north and to the east, how to get better transportation connections.
The university wanted to expand some of their buildings, but they were in the floodplain, and they were not allowed to build in the floodplain.
We finally had bumped into each other enough that we said, you know, let's sit down together, because we're looking at the same area. That developed a partnership between the city, the Natural Resource District, and the university back in 1993.
The partnership was called the Joint Antelope Valley Authority. It's an example of the role NRDs play across the state. They assess a need, consider the perspectives of various stakeholders, and bring the right partners together to fill that need.
It affected downtown, it affected, a number of different residential communities and neighborhoods, the business district, the university, and we knew we needed a big public involvement process.
They worked closely with neighborhood associations and held hundreds of public hearings. They also involved federal agencies to help finance the project.
The Corps of Engineers was enlisted for flood control. Federal Highway Administration was enlisted for transportation. And HUD was enlisted, Housing and Urban Development, for some of the community revitalization.
After nearly 2 decades of planning and construction, the Antelope Valley Parkway has become a central corridor for the city of Lincoln, for cars, pedestrians, and cyclists, and it provides habitat for urban wildlife.
It's kind of just a relaxing thing, even though you're in the middle of Lincoln. The other thing it did is it took us out of a floodplain, which is a heck of a deal. I'm not paying flood insurance anymore, so.
On May 7, 2015, the project proved its worth for its original purpose, flood control.
The water comes down from the watershed very quickly. In an urban setting, it runs off very quickly. Filled up the conduit, went over the weir, ran through. It would have been probably 12 foot deep over our heads right here.
It was one of the worst floods in the history of Lincoln. For Lower Platte South Natural Resources District, it was their return on an investment of 20 years' time and $29 million that the NRD contributed to the project.
It's very impressive to see that amount of water, how quickly it can come up, and see how it moves through this area. Watching that is just, it's kind of one of those eureka. It works. Just like they said it was going to, just like they designed it. Thank God it was in here and not 6 blocks wide.
An Army Corps of Engineers study found that the Antelope Valley Flood Control Project saved the city over $31 million in damages in the May 2015 flood.